So, did you know that about 80% of people diagnosed with an autoimmune condition are women? That's 80%. Now, that is not a coincidence, okay? And it's not because women are weak, it's not because women don't look after themselves. It's because we are conditioned. And so when we understand that it's our conditioning in society that's leading to beliefs and a story that we tell ourselves and a way we have to be, this is going to manifest in our health. Okay. So many women find that they're diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and they've asked themselves why, but without getting a satisfying answer. Okay. So let's dig into that. So the reason that your doctors don't explain is that I don't even think that they understand. But when you understand, it will change completely the way that you look at your health. Okay. So what happens here is that the immune system is actually doing its job, and its job is to distinguish from self and non-self, and anything else is a threat. Okay. I can't even speak. It protects us against anything that doesn't belong, whether that's an insect bite, a pollutant in the air, and it leaves alone what is okay. Now, when there's an autoimmune condition in play, that distinction breaks down. The body has stopped understanding what is a threat and what isn't, and sees absolutely everything as a threat, and even starts to attack itself. Now, we have to remember that there's many different autoimmune conditions, and they each have their own profile in terms of what's going on. So the body-mind parallel is direct, and it's present in all of these. So when the immune system is attacking the self, that mirrors what's going on within us emotionally, okay? Often for years and years before the illness comes out. So it's not always what's going on right now that is the issue. It could be what's been happening for the last 10 years or something that was created 10 years ago. There's no definite rule here, okay? It's about how your body is dealing with it. So the body protects against what doesn't belong and leaves alone what does. And so when it's attacking itself, we have to look at the reason we are attacking ourselves. And this will most likely be on a subconscious basis. So you're not consciously doing this. Sometimes you might be, but a lot of the time it's all going on beneath the surface. So if you've had a lot of anger, frustration, criticism, and you've taken that inward because you can't express your opinion on that, that alone is going to do it. And so a person that has absorbed so much of that from people around them, the immune system's lost the ability to tell who's attacking and why. Okay. So the reason this is a female pattern is because we are taught to be agreeable. If women speak up and say, no, I don't want to do that, no, I don't like that, that has caused us problems. Now, a lot of that is generational. And so I was brought up in the 70s, and definitely in that, decade, that generation, women weren't expected to have an opinion. The men had the opinion, the men knew best, even when they didn't. And so that is a major issue. And although current generations have not necessarily been brought up on that, they will inherit some of it from their parents because their parents are doing it without realizing it. Okay. And so to suppress what we feel, to keep the peace, to keep the environment around us as less toxic as possible, anger in particular is one of the most suppressed emotions in women. We're not allowed to show that anger. We might give the other half the silent treatment, or we might slam a door, or we might, walk around huffing, but we're not really encouraged to express the fact that we're angry at someone or something, okay? And that's because it would have had social consequences. And this is why, going way back when, to the 60s, when women were wearing their bras, it was just so horrifying to the whole of society, because those women that conformed didn't do that, and it was just mind-boggling that people did. And going back even further, like the suffragettes, that was a massive issue. We also had the war, where the men went away to war and the women had to take over the jobs. And actually, do you know what? They quite enjoyed it. But when the men wanted to come back, they wanted the jobs back. And the women were like, no, actually, we're quite enjoying this power. But that became a problem as well. They were accused of not being natural and of having unnatural behaviours and things, and all sorts of other things that's not polite to put on one of these videos. So because of that, the emotions got suppressed. Now, you've heard my thing about emotional knickers, you know, those underwear that kind of hide all the fat, so you can wear a nice dress and look all nice and sleek. That fat doesn't go away while you've got those knickers on, and neither do your emotions when you put on your emotional knickers. At some point, something is going to go bang. At the least, you might have a massive emotional explosion, but it's more likely that it's just going to come out in your body somewhere rather than out verbally, because it's turned inward and it's now causing problems. It's becoming toxic. It's festering. So the specific condition that you have reveals exactly what's going on. So the umbrella of autoimmune conditions is that there's self-attack going on and suppressed emotions. But the actual condition that tells you more is the actual illness. So Hashimoto's or thyroid dysfunction, that sits in the throat, in that dip. So that's all about suppressed voice or unexpression of truth and editing who we are to the world for years, okay? And that might be because your parents don't approve. It could be that society doesn't approve, or your village doesn't approve. It doesn't matter, but it's going to cause a problem. Rheumatoid arthritis is in the joints. So that's all about flexibility, self-devaluation, rigid self-criticism, resistance to changing direction. And again, that's all learned behavior, learned belief, okay? MS, multiple sclerosis, that affects the myelin sheath that protects the nerves, and that protective layer is breaking down. And that's because we felt unprotected, overly sensitized, unable to shield against what is coming at us, okay? Psoriasis, which is a skin condition, that sits in the skin, and that's the boundary between us and the world. It's the most personal boundary that you could possibly find. So each condition is the body being very specific about what's going on and where the internal conflict is living. So what does this mean for healing? Well, understanding the root is not about blaming yourself. It's not about blaming family, friends, teachers, society. It's just about getting curious about what your body has been carrying and why it has reached this point. It is not malfunctioning. It is communicating. It is talking to you. And my job is to interpret that language. My job is to help you understand what your body is telling you. So this work sits along your medical treatment, not instead of it. But what it adds is that it brings a layer for us to delve into that a lot of medical practices do not do. They want to treat the symptom, they're not treating the cause. So if any of this has landed for you, I've got a free guide you can download. There's a link in the notes below. Now, there are 3 real stories from 3 real women. They're very, very different illnesses, but they've all got the one common root, and that's the important bit. So have a look at my download. Come and talk to me, ask your questions, and let's talk about what's going on, because everyone is different, and therefore your route and your road is very different to mine. but I promise you that the root can be found. Speak to you later.